Hi, I'm Christine Herman of Herman's Quality Meat Shop in Newark, Delaware. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Tonight we're going to be talking about how to prepare a filet for you to either roast or we're going to cut them into steaks. Either way, are you ready? We're going to get right into this. I have a filet, basically how it comes right off the animal, and we're going to prepare this for you. You're going to get to watch me. It's kind of a little work of art. Lots of people enjoy watching us do this. Something different that occurs at our store versus somewhere else. But there is a lot of unwanted stuff in a filet. And we're going to start by taking off the side piece that we call a chain. I'm going to turn this around so you can see it, this piece right here. We're going to just take that off. I'm going to follow the seam in the muscle. Comes off just like that. And this meat right there, we actually, as I've said many times before, we don't waste anything, and that can be trimmed up nice and neatly and used for some ground meat. Ground filet is quite delicious, by the way. You don't get to see that very often anywhere. So the filet roast, or the filet of the animal, is the most tender muscle. Yes, it is still a muscle of the animal. And the reason why it's the most tender is because it is the least used muscle in the animal. And it is part of the back of the animal, along the loin and just below the rib area. And that is why it is so tender and delicate, and you don't need much to cut it because it's the least used muscle. And there's a nice piece of what we call silver skin on here that we always take off, because that you cannot chew. You can see I can't even pull it. So we discard that. And we trim it up nice and neat for you. There's definitely some waste, but that's okay, because all of this outer meats and fat that I'm removing is what protects the delicate meat inside. We sell hundreds of fillets throughout the year, but also the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, you name it, any holiday, we sell filet roasts and filet steaks all the time. And they are a very easy piece of meat to cook and very much enjoyed and very simple to prepare, as I said. They don't require much. You can a little bit of salt and pepper, or you can be elaborate and you can do a lot of different things with it. A lot of our customers will do a Wellington with the filet. You're maybe familiar with that, and that's where you wrap it in like a phyllo dough. And this tendon comes straight down to the very tip. We make sure we take that off. Might be kind of hard to see some of what I'm doing on the camera just because of my angle, but I have to be close to what I'm doing here. But I can turn this around a little bit so you can have a better idea of what I'm doing and how I'm taking this off. It doesn't take long. I like to take my time. I'm sure it could be done much faster, but that's okay. I'm not in any hurry, are you? I didn't think so. We're here together in this video. We're not rushing at all. We're just going to clean this up one step at a time. taking off some of the fat, as I said. One of the advantages of a filet is that you can cook it as individual steaks, and that way every guest or family member can have it cooked exactly the way they want it, and also the size that they want. We believe that a nice average steak is about 6 ounces. And keep in mind that that's 6 ounces of solid meat. You'll see when I'm done that there's no waste, there's no bone, there's no fat. So 6 ounces of meat is certainly a nice portion. I like to trim out all this outside edge. We do have those customers that prefer something bigger, 7 ounces, 8 ounces, 10 ounces. That's a large piece of meat there. But I know they don't eat that much on a regular basis. You can see how this is trimming up nicely. Nice and clean and neat and solid. Because when you get this home, you want to have exactly what you want and not this piece of fat that's tucked inside. I know it's there. You may not realize it's there until you get it home, but you want to make sure that it's removed. And that's my job, is to remove it for you and to clean this up so it's nice and neat. We do have customers that like to do this at home, buy a whole fillet and trim it up themselves. And they like to tinker in their kitchen. And then there are those that just want their steak so they can enjoy without the fuss and mess of all this extra trim and meat. And that's okay too. So you can see how nice and lean this is, how pretty that looks. I'll turn this over. You can remove this piece off the top. This is a nice solid piece of meat here, but we often remove it and start your fillet from right about there. And that's just about it. It's pretty much all there is to it. It always helps to have a nice sharp knife. We have plenty of those here in the store. We each have our own set of equipment. And knives are very important. We also offer a knife sharpening service that we can talk about in another video. But basically, there you have it. I'm going to clean my block a little bit. Sorry about that. I just use the towel and wipe that down. And there you have your fillet. There's your fillet roast right there, nice and ready. What I can do now at this point is I can put a couple strings to hold it together here. I can tuck the tail in if you're doing a Wellington and want that like so. This piece started out at about 6 pounds, and right now we're probably about 3.5 to 4 pounds. I can cut as much of this as you'd like depending upon your serving. So if you're serving 6 people, we would recommend about a 3-pound roast, or we can cut these into steaks as I mentioned earlier. And your steaks would look something like this. There's this little one right there. There's another one. There's another one. There's 3 nice steaks right there in a row. And take that little guy out from underneath, and here's your solid center here, which would make a lovely roast for dinner. That is all there is to a filet roast and your filet steaks. Okay. We all have our favorite kitchen utensils. One of my favorites happens to be the grater, and as you see here, I have multiple graters and planers that do different things. We all know probably one of our favorite things to use our grater for is for our cheese, and we have multiple sides to this particular grater that does just that. We can also use our grater for vegetables. I'm a fan of grating my carrots because for me, when I make my salad, I don't like to bite into a carrot. It's too much effort to chew in a salad. So I like to grate my carrot and put it in my salad. That gives it some light texture, and it also gives a fun flavor without a lot of effort. The lemon is also an awesome lemon, lime, and even other citruses are great for what's the word I want to use? For zesting. That's the word I want to use on your grater. And you've got a couple different settings that gives you a nice fine grate. And I've already grated a lot of that already, so there's not a whole lot left on that one. Did you know that there are certain herbs that you can grate? I never really thought about it before. I don't use a whole lot of ginger and nutmeg and even cinnamon, but you can certainly use your grater or your planer for that purpose. And it gives your meals a nice fresh flavor by using the fresh nutmeg and ginger. And just a little side note, I was doing a little bit of research about that because, again, I don't use either one of those very often. However, I learned that if you keep ginger whole in the freezer, it stays fresher longer, and you don't want to defrost it or take it out of the refrigerator or freezer until you're ready to use it, because otherwise it becomes soggy, and that's the last thing you want, especially when you want to be able to grate it and use it nice and fresh. For years, I always thought my mom, well, I still think my mom's a genius. However, my mom never bought breadcrumbs. She would always say, just hold on to the bread. I was like, Mom, we're not going to eat it. It's okay, let it go stale. Why do you want stale bread? What's that all about? Well, she takes her stale bread, lets it get hard, sits out on the counter for a couple days, and then she grates it. And she makes her own breadcrumbs, which is absolutely brilliant. And, yep, who would have thought to do that? But when you do, you have your own fresh breadcrumbs. And you can season it however you want that way. You don't have to buy something that may even have preservatives in it, especially if you know where the bread came from, if you make it yourself or if it's a fresh baked bread from somewhere else. I have my little favorite little guy here that's perfect for grating garlic, and grating butter is also nice in baking recipes. Something that I'm learning about, that you can actually, you get the curls from the butter and you just drop it right into your pie recipe, and it works amazing because it's already like half melted, which is really cool. But my favorite, all-time favorite item to grate on a cold winter day, you guessed it, chocolate. And guess where this is going? I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm a hot chocolate drinker. The more chocolate, the better. I hope that was a helpful tip. Thank you. I'm going to share with you a few ideas on how to cook your fillets and your roasts. Maybe you've got your own, but these are just some of the ideas that I have and that I have been privy to from some of my customers. There is always the easiest, which is either just grilling, broiling, or pan frying. And just that simple. A little bit of salt and pepper. You don't need a whole lot of seasoning. It's tender the way it is, so marinating it really isn't necessary. We've talked about marinating in other videos, and that's the main purpose of marinating, is to break down the muscle tissue. This particular cut of meat is so tender as it is that it doesn't need anything more than to impart the flavor of the marinade that you want to impart with it. So 15 minutes maybe is probably about all you really need. My favorite is the salt and pepper and maybe a little bit of fresh garlic on top, as I have alluded to. You can even grate it or chop it up fine, or just have some big chunks in the frying pan if you're going to be cooking it that way. We do have customers that like to do a sear, where they do it on high heat and then they finish it off in the oven. That's another awesome way, or in the grill, either way. And the same thing with your roast. Your roast has a tendency, in my opinion, to give a different flavor when it's cooked because you're cooking it as a whole piece and all of the flavors are together in one piece. And then from there, when you serve it, you can cut it into either steak-sized portions or you can slice it thin, and each person gets 3 or 4 or however many thinner slices, or you can serve it kind of buffet style on a dish. Again, seasoning it with your salt and pepper, always on an open rack or on the grill, kind of thinking the same way. Your grill is like an open rack. You don't want the meat to sit in its own juices. We like to recommend that you let your meat come to room temperature and turn your oven to high, like 500 degrees, 450 to 500 degrees. Put the meat in the oven, and we always, unless you're doing something like the Wellington, will include a nice piece of fat on top. Once you season the meat, you put the fat on top. That helps to protect the meat from burning on the outside. Unless, of course, that's the look that, or the char that you're looking for in that sear. And even so, after you sear it, you can put that on top. And I usually like to suggest maybe you put about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of water in the pan underneath to collect the drippings, and that you can use later to make a gravy. And then bake it that high temperature, 450, 500 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then reduce the temperature down to about 325. I prefer a little lower and slower. Some people like to cook it a little higher, like 350, and that's perfectly fine. But you always want to use your thermometer to get your internal temperature. Remember, rare starts at 125 and it goes up to well done at 160. And like to suggest that you let your meat also, once you take it out of the oven, let it rest for about 5 to 7 minutes on the countertop before you slice it. And then you're going to remove this fat. It's going to kind of get nice and curly, kind of fun. And then you have your roast resting. Once it's finished resting, then you can slice it according to how you want to serve it at that point. And again, it's simple and delicious. So I hope that was a helpful tip for you. And always keep in mind that our fillets are amazing year-round, especially, as my beanies suggest, that the holidays in this case. And we hope that this was a helpful video for you to learn about how a fillet is prepared and what it looks like before, during, and after the finished process. So we hope that you will like our page and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to have you comment and be part of our Herman family. Thank you so much. God bless you.